What's good, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Torraine Walker TV. I am Torraine Walker. If you're just coming in, smash up the likes. If you're just coming back to the show, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you back again. It's going to be an interesting show tonight. We're going to talk about some things that are on the minds of a lot of people who are concerned with Black politics. A couple of days ago, Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack made a TikTok video of her twerking on a beach that went viral. Here's the video.
Vote Senator Mack. Vote Senator Mack.
That video has created a lot of controversy. Again, like I said, the video went viral. It set off a lot of conversation about respectability politics and the proper image of a public figure, especially a Black public figure. So I wanted to have a panel to talk about this today, and I wanted to have an all-woman panel. And I was fortunate enough to get some very prominent women who are very vocal on social media, talking about women's issues and political issues to join me. I'm going to go through the panel really quick. First person I'm going to introduce is Zakiya Sankara-Jabbar. She's a Black nationalist, a thought leader, and the co-founder of Racial Justice Now. Second person is Rhonda Mary. She's a political commentator and a Second Amendment advocate. And last but definitely not least is Paradise Paris. She's a YouTuber and social media influencer. And ladies, how you doing?
Great. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good.
How you doing, everybody? Surrounded by all these sisters and everything. I gotta be on my best behavior tonight. I'm not gonna curse or nothing. I'm gonna let y'all do it.
All right.
All right. So let's get into it. Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, it's been a really hot topic. This sister took it upon herself to go down to the beach in Rhode Island and twerk and then tell everybody to vote for her. There's been a lot of conversation about it, pro and con. So I want to start off with your thoughts about this. I'm going to start with Zakiya and then we'll go around the room. Sister Zakiya, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I guess I'm not surprised. And I guess I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into it. I mean, I certainly don't think that it's a good look in terms of if the fact that we're supposed to be voting to improve our material conditions. And I believe that this type of expression, I will say, is indicative of Black politics today. We don't focus on substance. We don't focus on the actual material needs of the people that vote for us and put us into office. We do things that are popular and that are going to go viral and those types of things. Instead of actually focusing on policy. And I think that's an issue, not just with Black Democrats, but with Democrats as a whole. They never want to focus on policy. It's always some sort of cultural thing, whether they leverage Black women saved America, you know what I mean, when it came to the presidency or those types of things. So, I mean, I guess it's just disappointing, but also par for the course. That's my initial thoughts. And I honestly didn't put a lot of thought into it. I was just like, oh, well. But I did see a lot of people, obviously, Tariq Nasheed shared it. So, you know, he got a lot of followers and a couple of other people shared it, you know, and was just, yeah.
All right, Rondo, what do you think?
I would have to agree. I think that she made some excellent points. I think in a lot of ways, politics is now becoming a popularity contest versus actual policy. I think that they think many voters, particularly younger voters, are very low intelligent voters. I think that they can win us over with things like pearls and chucks and twerk videos and cooking videos. And things like that, hip hop songs and music and dancing. And I think it says a lot about how they feel about us. And I think that if these type of antics were coming from any other demographics, it would be called exactly what it is, racist.
Okay. All right. Paris, what do you think? What's on your mind?
I think it's low class, and I honestly think it's a bunch of bullshit, if I'm being completely fair. You find a lot of what's happening now is they're trying to find this quote unquote black as hell representation. They're getting all the women that are able to pass the paper bag brown test, and they're putting us in position to where they're trying to propagate, oh, these are educated black women, this, that, and the third, but everything that you show in the representation never have anything to do with representation of the education part. It never has anything to do with the credentials and things like that. And it's funny that Rhonda even mentioned us being a least educated demographic, because we're the most educated. We're the ones that fighting so hard to get out of student loan debt, which is one of the reasons why Joe Biden sold us. One of the reasons why Bernie Sanders was able to run so long is because we're looking to get out of the debt. I don't think that anything is funny about the way that the politics are going anymore, and it also goes to show how minimal that they pay attention to us, because if you realize that we're very engaged, we voted the most out of any other generation in years.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that point because I feel like there's a conversation to be had about the idea of respectability politics, because I hear a lot of that right now. A lot of people are saying that she wasn't wrong in what she was doing, that she has a right to display her body the same as anybody else, and that what she did was nowhere near as bad as like something like a white politician like Trump, some of the things that Trump has done, and some people on the other side. My question, and I want to throw this out to the panel, is why does respectability politics have to be so tied into like completely showing your body instead of moving in a different way? Like if you look at somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she was a working class Puerto Rican woman. I hope I'm not messing up her ethnicity, but she ran on the platform of being a working class woman from New York who walked around her constituency like in heels, but in jeans and everything with a blazer over it. And that was considered to be outside of the norm of what somebody from traditional politics moves as. But it seems like when it comes to talk to black people, we always either have to get naked or we have to go get out and pop lock. What do you think about that?
I think, again, the appeal to black voters is not on substance. I think we have to remember that, and that this woman is, and what she did is par for the course. In terms of respectability politics, I don't subscribe to that. That's some academic jargon. I subscribe to how I was raised as a black woman. I was raised a certain kind of way to carry myself in a certain kind of way. And that is not necessarily about respectability. That's about, just having some class about yourself, just caring about, your appearance and all of those things. So why does anything that in my mind makes sense have to automatically, equal respectability politics? I don't understand why so many of these sisters adopt academic jargon and then come to the community and tell us that we all backwards because we're participating in some shit that they didn't learn from a white theorist. That's how I feel about it.
Let me piggyback off that, because I agree with her sentiment. And even this idea of respectability politics, like the whole idea of it is our relation to white people. Like, why does everything have to be how we relate to white people? And looking at this, it's almost as if saying that black people aren't respectable on their own accord. Like, are we not respectable? Do we not have our own level of decorum, standards, tradition, culture, history, without making it about white people? I don't know, but I would assume maybe some of the panelists, but I was raised in the South, predominantly black community.
Me too.
And
likewise,
we come from
Southern
very
Belle,
traditional, family-oriented, balancing the masculine and the feminine energy. And, a lot of us come the Bible Belt and all those things, and not even to make it tied to religion at all, but a certain level of decorum, like grandmas didn't play. You know what I mean? And I just see that we are losing so much of the essence of just having a standard when we go out into society. And in the moment that somebody says something about it, instead of acting like most of us were raised like this, because a lot of y'all that's even in the North now, they say Chicago people, you just a Mississippi person in a coat, you know? So a lot of that migration, a lot of our traditions and families were rooted in the South and maybe migrated over the country over time. But a lot of us are connected in those ways if you look back into our family histories and things like this. And so to act like it's so outlandish that we still have morals or that we're in the wrong, I think it's like trying to play these mind games on us, honestly. And it's
I will
a
say,
insult to our intelligence.
I agree.
Go ahead, Paris.
I agree. I will say, I know that the women were saying that they don't necessarily follow after respectability politics, but in actuality, I do, because there is a time and a place for things. And I think even though that term is related to white academia, we can't allow them to change our narrative and keep painting us out to be the cool culture when it's beneficial, because to be Bergios was affiliated with Black First. We're the ones that were dressed up all the time in our Sunday's best. We're the ones that were clean cut. We're the ones that kept ourselves groomed. We introduced that into society. That's not them. We were the ones who were always trying to put ourselves in position to be well tailored, well groomed, and upkept. And we showed that to them. We showed them how to wear suits and ties. We showed them how to clean themselves. We showed them what it looks like to be in your best dress. But it's only it's funny. It's funny how we only like to reference Black people to money when somebody's being ostracized from the culture. That was ours too. Why every time y'all think y'all want to be Black, it comes with degeneracy? That's not us. That was never us. That was always a stereotype placed on us. And even down in the hood, everybody goes and get an education. And this is why it's so hard for us to even tap into the market of letting girls know to cover yourself up, put your clothes on, close your legs, because we have always been known to have sex appeal. We have always been known to be very attractive for Black people. Every single last one of us, men and women. That was always a thing for us. We always know that our bodies have spoken for us when we walk into the room, which is why us and elders pride education. So to see that even with us pride in education, we want to talk about we're more than our bodies, and you can profile yourself when you're dating somebody like you're going on a job interview. But past that, you don't know anything else about actually telling people who you are if it does not represent your body. I'm not that. And I'm not going to keep allowing them to allow that feministic white woman trope to be passed off on me, because I am more than my body. I can identify you more than my body. And I also can identify you more than what this white academia has said in the textbook. So when you speak to me or you talk to me about politics or you talk to me about what's happening in around me, and I also find it very funny too that they utilize this with specifically Black women and specifically LGBTQA plus affiliated Black people. This is always a thing, that they're putting themselves in position to be the ones that are leading the forefront of the run. And I find it very comical considering the fact that this is a very small minority of people that you represent. You don't tell the story of the every average day Black person just because of your sexuality. That doesn't make you, more hard. That doesn't make you easier to relate to, and it doesn't make your trope more harder. We can identify in all of these sectors because technically there's only 3 sectionalities. That's the man, the girl, the woman, and the children of Black people. It's only 3 intersectionalities. The rest of it is just an era for confusion, and I'm tired of seeing it.
Let me ask you this. You actually touched on a really good point, and Zakia touched on something as well. If we're going to talk about respectability politics, we have to separate it from the idea of respectability in the politics. And there seems to be a thing that happens, especially in the Black community. I think it may happen in others, but not as much as it happens in the Black community, where people lead with this idea of imagery and they deal with this idea of optics over any sort of policy. Do you think that maybe that's what's going on right now? That maybe this senator is responding to some of the things that seem to resonate with a lot of Black people, not Black people in the rank and file, but Black people who are in these circles in politics and in communications and things like that, that's what we want? Do you think that might be part of it? Zakia, what do you think?
No, not at all.
Let me have Zakia ask real quick.
Who wants to see Black women naked and twerking? I'm sorry.
No, what I'm saying is the people who create these images, the people who work in political communications outlets and people who work for being spokespeople for political parties. These people, a lot of them are really disconnected from the majority of Black people. So they think that this is what they want. Do you think that that's why? Do you think that's why these things are happening? That's what maybe who she's listening to. That's what she's trying to appeal to, or that's who's in her ear possibly.
She has a white affect. I actually went and listened to her, and I looked at the type of things that she advocates for. That woman ain't got no connection to the Black community. I can almost tell you without actually doing the research that she probably grew up in the suburbs, went to all white schools, K through 12. She's really a white woman, to be honest with you. She does not give a Black woman affect, because if she was raised by Black Southern women, ain't no way in hell. Even if she did go to college, she gonna get and twerk on TikTok like that. If she was raised by, Black folks from the South. And so, I think that she probably comes from and I might get in a little trouble for saying this, possibly comes from a, what's that group? Jack and Jill? Well, no, they're more conservative. No, they're more conservative. You're talking about where they want to get real close to white folks, living out in white people's neighborhoods, going to all white schools and things like that. And a lot of times their kids come out like that. They act like white people. That's what white people would do, and they think that that's cool. That is not Black culture. That's what I think I want people to understand. That's not something traditionally you're going to see Black women doing.
But here's the thing, though. The point I get that, and we have to research that and find out if that's true or not. But the question I'm asking is that a lot of times, people who are disconnected from the culture or people who are trying to get into public office, and they have people in their ear who are giving them advice. And a lot of times,
she probably got a white campaign manager. Absolutely, most of the time.
But that's what I'm saying, though. But that's what I'm saying. A lot of times it could be like that.
They don't have Black staff. And I've actually gotten on some Black candidates. They will remain nameless right now, but I've gotten on some Black candidates who actually are running in predominantly Black districts for having all white staff on their campaigns. So absolutely, when it comes to the infrastructure, especially in the Democratic Party, you can actually, it's funny because Roland Martin actually points this out a lot. The Democrats actually spend so very little with Black, not just Black media folks, but even like Black consultants.
Yeah, that's true.
They're so disrespectful to Black people, but even the candidates themselves don't push.
No, that's the point I'm trying to make, because I'm thinking that a lot of the stuff we see and a lot of the tone deaf, Harris, y'all right?
Oh yeah, I'm fine. I was changing it because I see that everything wasn't covering the screen, but yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
No,
the
Paris,
point I was
you're making some salient points, sister. I really appreciate everything that you said. You too, Rhonda, both of you. But
that's the point I was trying to make. The question I was trying to ask. No, go ahead. The question I was trying to ask was
that her pointing out, because she brought in the history. Paris did. I appreciate her pointing out. We taught them how to take baths. We did. Like when you think about like Moorish history and stuff like that, my husband talks about that all the time. That's why when she said that really resonated with me. But yeah, there is differences, especially along.
But no, that's what I'm saying. My point is this. It's like you hear a lot of this, and a lot of these tone deaf campaigns come from people who are completely disconnected from the culture. And I'm thinking that that's probably why a lot of these things happen, because when you see stuff like people talking about hot sauce and people talking about pop blocking and dancing and stuff on the aisles, I think that comes from people who, if you have a candidate who's connected to Black culture, they would know where the line is and where you could play around and where to stop. And a lot of it is so blatant and so pandering that I feel like a lot of it is just so ridiculous that it's coming from people who are completely disconnected. Let me jump to Rhonda really quick. I see you came back. Hold on one second. Let me give this to Rhonda real quick. Let me ask her real quick because she got and took off. Rhonda, what are your thoughts about this as far as like the idea that in the Black community, when it comes out, when you're speaking to Black voters, there's a lot more pandering and there's a lot more optics over real policy. Do you think that's true or not?
I absolutely think that's true. And I want to touch on a point that she just made, because she talked about it being disrespectful, how, you know, you have these politicians that don't pay attention really to Black media and don't really work on the behalf of some of their Black constituents. Well, let's think about that a little bit, because if you know that Black people are going to vote for you at a 90% rate, regardless of what you do, why would you spend money and effort to hire more people in the Black community, to pay more attention to the Black community, to be more involved in the Black community? I mean, it seems like if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And if we are not holding them accountable and making them work for our vote, how does it matter? Like, at some point, I used to think that too, like, and I'm not saying that I don't to a certain extent, but I used to think like, oh, this is so disrespectful, how they do us and how they do this and how they do that. But if you allow somebody to do you any type of way for any type of loan, they're going to continue to treat you any type of way. I mean, that's just common sense. It's almost like we're in this perpetual abusive relationship. They know they can talk to us any kind of way. I mean, look how Joe Biden just did us. If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. You got his son out here smoking crack while he sent our daddies and uncles to jail for smoking crack. You got him saying right to Black leaders, y'all better start getting along with the Hispanics because they're about to outnumber you. So you better get your act together. And this country is getting worse, and it just ain't because of y'all. You know, so for them to say these things so boldly and get little to no pushback, and then not only do people got the nerve to show up in droves to vote for Biden, but then you got the nerve to talk down on your brother and sister that didn't. Like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
With the record. So,
yeah, let me speak on that really quick before you start. I saw a lot of that when 2020 was a wild year. So was 2019.
Yeah, well,
I saw a lot of people who have podcasts, well, not so much podcasts, but a lot of people who are very prominent Black people in media and in politics who were saying really wild things about Black people who were skeptical about voting for Joe Biden. And I can understand, you know, in a healthy democracy, there's supposed to be healthy debate about, you know, which political party and which political figure you want to support. But some of the stuff I saw against Black people who were pushing back against Biden, knowing that he has a history of going all the way back to the 1980s and the 1960s up until 1994 with the crime bill, which sent a lot of young Black men and a lot of elder Black men and broke up a lot of Black families, which is why they had issues with him. And I saw so much vitriol and so much hatred spit at a lot of these Black people, Black men and Black women, from Black people in higher positions to talk, who are basically influencers in white media. It was wild to see. That's all I wanted to say. It was crazy.
I mean, look how they treated Uncle Luke. Look how they treated Ice Cube. Like, are we really sitting here saying as Black people it's too much to ask politicians, what do we get out of the deal? I'm not talking about feel good tweets and hashtags. Like, look at the whole Jalen Walker thing. Like, people are almost quiet about it. You see very few people even mention it. Imagine if that happened in 2020. Like, let's just keep it real. This is happening right in front of our eyes, and people are trying to make us believe that we're not seeing it. We're seeing the stark difference. And now we still here with the same racism, the same police brutality, but a lot less groceries and a lot less gas.
Paris, what you got? That's fire, sis.
I don't think this has anything to do with who's related to the culture. Not, if all honesty. I'm gonna be completely candid. I think they is just making a mockery of this, because if you think about it, every time we have had some type of injustice going on, whether it was police brutality or even so recent as Roe v. Wade, you've seen people outside twerking. That's what I think that they're trying to do. They're trying to make a political statement like, this is how we understand our people by twerking. But here's the thing. You're a politician. You're about education. You're about understanding the laws. You're about making things right in the communities for people. I don't need you shaking your ass. If I want to see that, I will look at Megan Thee Stallion. I will look at Cardi B. I will look at City Girls. I will look at Dream Doll. I will look at Sweetie or all those other women, Lotto or whoever. I will look at them because they're rappers. They're entertainers. They're made to put on a minstrel show for me. Your ass need to be somewhere in those books, which you were, changing some things or implementing some different strategies to help formulate and adjust and adapt to this economy. So I think they're actually making a mockery of us. I said it after 2020 had ended and they started coming out with all these police brutality videos. That to me was a clear indication. You see what the hell going on. You see us. And I feel like they utilize certain people in order to propagate the message. Because there were videos of Black women in Atlanta, which we know is like a stripper mecca down there, that were twerking outside when they were passing time by for police brutality just so they wouldn't go in. Well, here's the thing. They're regular citizens. They're outside. You got something to do. You're getting paid tax dollars. I don't need you walking around trying to act like you're a clown in the circus. It's not funny. It's not cute. I do think they see us. I think that they also, too, utilize certain people in certain places to make it seem like, oh, we're in touch with the Black culture, just like when they had Nancy Pelosi and a few other people take their ass up to the Capitol and get down on the knee with the fist up. What are you doing that for? What you doing that for? Get your ass up. Y'all over here in D.C. talking about Black Lives Matter in the street for 3 months. We don't need that. We need a law passed that stops anti-Black hate. That's what we need. We need our fucking reparations. So for y'all to sit here and try to make it seem like twerking is a hot thing. Listen, if I choose to go and shake my ass, guess what? I'm doing it on TikTok where I can get paid. I'm doing it on my free time in the club. That's not what you're supposed to do. One thing that I can say about America, especially when it comes to white people, tradition is key. Stick to tradition. Get the same people that's in there that's been fucking up out of there. But stick to the tradition. We need those traditional values. And once we start losing that and they start allowing Black people to get in those areas and open doors and do whatever they want, it's almost as if they look to have a valid reason as to why it should not be you. Because if you can say all day long, especially as a Black woman, oh, I'm a double in the minority. I work 4 times as hard. I have to work harder than everybody. I have to work harder than the Black man. I have to work harder than the white woman and the white man. I have to work harder than everybody. Then go to work. The hell are you doing? Get off the top of your head. And I ain't never seen no Black woman who thought that it would be okay to put her hair in goddamn sand. If you know anything about our hair,
let's talk about it. Like, actually, seriously, y'all.
That's why I said she's really a white woman, because we ain't messing up our hair.
That's why. See everybody. That's why I wanted to have these sisters on here, because I knew they would bring a perspective that I would not understand. So that's why I wanted to have an all-woman panel. I'm bald headed, so I don't know nothing about that. But I do know you don't mess with the sisters' hair.
We ain't doing
sisters
that.
Go to the pool and sit. Sisters go to the pool and sit on the edge of the pool. They ain't finna get their hair wet.
She even got a low cut, and then she got on the internet. You got on Twitter and try to justify that, ma'am. How about you don't be on the internet? See, that's the problem. You spending too much time on the internet and not outside. The rest of us, the real world is outside. Like I say all the time, Torraine, what you see, I got a heavy Twitter following. So when we talk about monetary things and we talk about what the rate of the economy looks like, or we talk about inflation and things like that, if you go to Twitter, you're going to not a real place, just like Dave Chappelle said, because they do not live in a real reality. The average Black woman is making anywhere between 28 and 67K, and that's in DC, 28K in Mississippi. Around here in Texas, which I'm here, you making about 38K. So to even think that a person, can get on Twitter and try to validate what you're doing, of course you're gonna run into a whole bunch of morons who are gonna tell you it's okay. Every time you log onto Twitter, it don't matter if it's the crack of dawn or the cup of midnight, you seeing booty, butt, everything. You seeing everything. You can't get away from it, even if that's not what you have
is so
So
true.
what makes me think that you
so
would
true.
be a refutable person to get on Twitter and try to validate that? No, you have other platforms for that. Twitter is not a real place when it comes to social issues or even making public apologies. That's the last place I would go.
Yeah, I have two things I want to say. The first one is about her saying Twitter is not a real place. If you guys know that defund the police was very, very popular on social media, but as you will see recently, many of these Democrat politicians have retracted, either gone silent, or completely came out and said that this has in fact hurt their campaigns. With a lot of these white suburban Democrats and even the older Black Americans who have seen crime increasing in these neighborhoods, and they heard defund the police is not sitting right with them. And so Democrats knew before going into midterms, we have to undo some of this damage that has been done to our reputation as being lawless, allowing anarchy and all of these other things, right? And so I think that has a big deal to do with a part of why they are in some parts ignoring Black people, because they think that the police brutality issue is going to be at the top of the objective for a lot of people. But that's why they're so quiet now, because they know in a lot of ways that has hurt them. And they are very much scared of a lot of people either checking out before midterms or a red wave. Also, somebody said something about politicians, Black politicians in particular, trying to be like relatable and doing these things that are relatable, but they're surrounded by these white staffers and things like this, which actually makes them unrelatable to majority of Black people who are in the South and have these traditional values.
Not even just the South, Black people, period, because the numbers show it. And I know we always, us specifically, Rhonda, like here, I'm a Southern Belle. I come from Arkansas, baby. I'm in Texas. I ain't going nowhere above the Mason-Dixon. But even with that, if they trying to say that Chicagoans ain't nothing but Mississippians in a coat, then that should show you right there that you still out of touch. Because you got poor New Yorkers. You got, when you talk about Black people and you talk about wealth, you're talking about parts of Detroit, and you're talking about parts of Virginias and parts of the Carolinas. You're not talking about even the northern portion of it. Detroit specifically, a heavy staple area for Black people. So even then, you're out of touch with the every average day person. Again, numbers showing Black people ain't accumulating the money that they think that we're projecting out as consumers. We're figuring it out. We're making it work. But we hold the highest debt deficit.
This thing, interestingly enough, not only runs through politics, but it also runs through Hollywood as well. You have a lot of these Black writers who are writing these shows, and they've tried to throw a lot of this like Black trauma porn and things like that people have complaints about. People have said like, y'all are turning real pain points into like trying to prop up this billion-dollar industry, turning our pain into profit for, I mean, ultimately like white liberals and suburban hipsters.
I had
and trying to make it as if like the power, the fist, and it's just cool. And then you'll see these fashion artists turn around and make white artists make these George Floyd pillows, or they'll make Mike Brown jewelry, and it's like everybody's trying to profit off of this thing while we aren't reaping any of the benefits and being blamed for all of the downturn, whether it's y'all the reason why y'all are the reason why we can't get abortion rights passed. Y'all didn't vote hard enough this time. Vote harder. You're still not doing it right, or like, just all of these other things. And it's like, who's the real problem here? Y'all are perpetuating the issues, not resolving the issues, overlooking the issues. And it seems to be a theme throughout politics and Hollywood. I think they both share forced relatability.
I want to speak to that really quick. everything you just said is absolutely correct. And you're absolutely right that the people who are creating quote unquote Black content in Hollywood, 98% of them are really disconnected from the majority of Black people. They either grew up in the suburbs way far away from Black people, or they discovered their Blackness in college. And a lot of them are overcompensating. And a lot of them, the only way they can really relate to Black culture is through Black suffering and Black pain. And the other part of this, which is a very dark thing that we don't like to talk about, but it's true, Black suffering is very lucrative in America. You can make a lot of money profiting off of Black death and Black pain. I mean, all the way down to the street level. If you take a look at, I'm not going to get into it tonight, but if you take a look at some of the things that happened on the ground after Mike Brown and George Floyd, you can take Black death, and if you can package it and market it, you can make a ton of money with that. And the same thing is happening in Hollywood and in scripted content. I think there are some people who really are trying to get the message out, because I think Lovecraft Country and some other shows, and either The Watchmen to a point, they did a really good job of educating white people and people, even Black people who may not have known about Black Wall Street and Tulsa and that sort of thing. I think there's an educational aspect that you can put into entertainment, but the majority of it is like, but the majority of it,
huge conversation.
Yeah, but the majority of it is about profiting off of Black death and Black pain. A lot of this stuff is not really connected to like a lot of Black stories. Like if you take a look at everything if you take a story that's shot in the ghetto or shot in the hood, it's always connected to death. It's always connected to poverty. It's always connected to pain, and that's there. But there's also joy and there's also love there as well. I hate to go back, but I think if you look at a movie like, and it's sad you had to go back to the 90s almost to do this, but if you look at a movie like Friday kind of showed you how the hood can really be. It's like you got wild stuff that goes on, but you also have things that are funny. You got people who are going to work. You don't have that sort of nuance when it talks about lower class and poor Black people anymore. It's either all death or it's all dope. You don't get anything else. And a lot of people who do that are not connected to the culture. And that ties into what we were saying earlier about politics. A lot of people who are crafting these political messages are completely removed from the culture. And they tell you to go out there with some fried chicken, go out there and dance in the street, go out there and bring some old rappers from 1995 out there to get you some votes, and then you'll be all right. So I think that's what a lot of what we're talking about here. I want to move on though. I think a lot of this also comes from, and I know Zakiya, because your background is in education and in education for young kids. If y'all are from the South, then y'all are probably familiar with a term that your grandmamas and your aunties probably call educated fools. These are people who went to say that. These are people who got all the education and they're book smart, but they're life dumb. And I think a lot of what is driving Black culture in the social media space, and definitely in the political space, comes from people who have a lot of academic intelligence and they went through the academy, but they didn't go through their culture. And I think a lot of what happened, what we saw on that beach, comes from that idea. If you take in social media, if you tie in a lot of theory that doesn't line up with Black reality outside of the social circles, I think a lot of that's tied into what we're seeing right now when it comes to political messaging. And as a key, I want you to answer that if you don't mind. Do you think that's what's going on as well?
What's the specific question, brother? You said a lot. I want to make sure I answer the right thing.
Well, the question is, how much influence does academia that's disconnected from Black culture have to do with some of this messaging that's going out politically and socially to our people?
Oh, man, I think that's the question of the day, brother. We don't talk about that enough. In fact, I said on my social media page, I believe it was on Facebook just last week, I said, academia has done a lot to destroy the minds of a lot of Black people. They really have. I mean, their minds are completely colonized. And I was saying that there are fighting for Black issues, but what they're really talking about when you hear them chanting and hear the things that are coming out of their mouth is white liberalism, shit that has already been approved by the white left. And I'm like, the white left and Black issues are not synonymous. You all need to be advocating from an African-centered perspective. And I'm not talking about like African-centered, like, we're from Africa. I'm talking about culture, historically, culture. Our culture is different. You know what I mean? I think one of the things that white liberals also did post the civil rights movement is all this, we're all the same, it's all love. No, we're not all the same. You know what I mean? So I think that that has a huge part to do it. And let me just go further and say this, because you mentioned, the 90s, having to go back to the 90s to get a sophisticated movie that gives you the breadth and the depth of Black working class communities. I would say the last sort of rise in strength of Black nationalism was also left in the 90s. We need a new resurgence of that. When I think about the attack that Black studies has received in the academy, all of the African American studies programs are nothing more than souped up gender programs now. They're not, none of them are rooted in Black nationalism and Black self-determination. And that's one of the main issues, is that you got a lot of these sisters who are now educated, and and they done went to Harvard. I think I heard her say, I got an Ivy League degree. Exactly. This explains everything. You see what I'm saying? I'm serious. Yeah, you got an Ivy League degree. That's what you went and learned. You see what I'm saying? So you're not learning tools to solve Black people's problems. You're learning tools to solve their problems. Dr. Amos Wilson talked about that all the time. So I encourage people, to really be studied. And it means a lot to be rooted in an African epistemology, meaning that we need to listen to our Black thinkers, our Black philosophers, in terms of the things that we should be advocating for. And I know this is not about this tonight, and I've talked about this on a couple of other channels, but like how they just assume that just because Black people vote primarily for Democrats, that we also totally on board with this Roe v. Wade stuff. You don't know Black people then. That Black people are not 100% behind that. In fact, the last study showed that less than 50% of the entire Black population in the country supports that. So I just think that there's a lot of nuance in our community that Black so-called intellectuals and Black elites don't want to deal with.
All right, Rhonda, I want to throw this out to you because as I said at the top of the show, you're a political commentator and you're also a Second Amendment advocate. And I think a lot of people, to Zakia's point, don't understand that there is a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, but there's definitely a conservative, quote unquote, conservative streak among Black people, especially older Black people. And you're starting to see a lot more of that among younger Black people. Now, what I want to say to the audience is that conservative for Black people means something totally different than conservative means for white people. We know what it means for white people. But for conservatives, for Black people, just means that we tend to be really fiscally conservative because we've historically had less resources than most people in this country. It also means that we're a little bit more socially conservative, regardless of what you see on TV, because we know the consequences of being socially irresponsible in our communities. We deal with it every day. So I wanted to ask you, do you think that the majority of, especially on the Democratic side and on the progressive side, that there is a lot of lack of understanding of what it means to be a full Black person with a conservative mindset?
Absolutely. I think that they try to, paint Black conservatives as the mainstream Black conservatives. And y'all know who some of those people are. And, I'm not going to use this to give them that light. However, people will try to use a broad brush to paint all people that may align with some conservative values like that. Like Zika said, they'll try to ignore that the Black community is not a monolith, right? And that we have these different opinions and attitudes about different policies and social policies and all types of things, right? Like music and the things facing our culture. And so I think that overall, for Black people, when you hear conservative, that just tends to mean our traditional values. When we talk about traditional values, I think that a lot of that comes from both being in the South and, like I said, being a part of that Bible Belt. A lot of us, whether we are religious now, whether we have moved on to different religions or whatever, a lot of us were either raised in Christian households or grandma or great grandma was a Southern Christian, probably in the Baptist church or the Pentecostal church or the Apostolic Kojic church. Like, people, y'all know what I'm talking about, And so a lot of our values come from that family. Very, very close-knit families in the South. Like, we're doing holidays, we're spending time together. Like, you going to grandma's for the summer. And so we should not feel like we are wrong for having those values. And I don't know who said this earlier, but somebody said that there seems to be a new streak among younger Black people with conservatism. I don't actually think that's the case. I think that now so many of us are being forced to fight back because they're trying to make us believe that we should be twerking just for the heck of it, that you should be able to abort your child up until they come out of the mother's womb, that there's no difference. There's no difference between a man and a woman. Like it's gone so far left, and you know your grandma will slap you upside their head. Don't play. And so now so many of us, we've allowed it to go so far for so long where it's like, all right, look now I'm just gonna have to say I'm not cool with that. I'm not feeling that. I wasn't raised like that. We don't do that where I'm from. We're not about that. And stop trying to put that on us. Stop trying to tell me when I turn on the TV, when I look on social media, this is who you are. You a Black woman. You look like this. You come from this demographic. You must think like this. Well, no, we don't. Majority of us don't. I get so many emails and DMs and messages of people saying, I agree with so much of what you say, but I am scared to speak out. Now, what does that say about our current culture? And then if you look at some of these nerds of the actual people y'all scared of, you wouldn't be so scared. I did an episode on Jubilee. I flew out there to California. It was the what's the name of that show where you have these two different opposing sides, and we were there talking about feminism, and you really had these people in the room, you trying to tell me about where I came from and my demographic. You don't even go there. You don't even work with women. You don't even work with organizations. You don't even work with the poor. These are just your talking points that you've been handed to look like a cool kid. And then I get back home, the episode airs, and all the Black people in my comments bigging me up. And then all the nerds coming for me. I don't represent y'all. I don't want to represent y'all. I don't want to have nothing to do with y'all, for real. And you got these white liberals got the nerve to tell me I should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself as a Black woman. Like, we should have never made y'all think it's okay to even talk to us like that. That was the first wrong move.
Exactly.
And where I'm from, that don't go down like that. Y'all gotta be, in no disrespect to people in the chat, because I don't know where you from, but the first thing that comes to my mind, you gotta be from a Cali or a New York where the demographic,
you telling the truth,
way a different way.
I felt the same way. That East Coast, West Coast bullshit, we don't operate like that.
You're not talking to us like that. Like, that's not a real thing. Like, at all. And it goes back to the Twitter is not real. Because you real Twitter fingers. You would never say this to my face. Like, don't get it twisted. And so some of these people are straight. It's like Revenge of the Nerds. Like, who you think you talking to? And so when I look at the people that were trying to call themselves coming for me, trolling me, when I look at these people and I'm seeing how you look, and you look like you probably was thrown in a trash can in school. And I'm like, you not finna take out that frustration of being bullied, or you feel like you seen now because you want to change your pronouns, and like, do that on somebody else's time. Don't do it on mine.
I want to take a quick break real quick, because y'all ladies turning up in here. All I got to do is sit back and give y'all the mic. I just want to do a lot of quick house cleaning, then we're going to come right back. If you're enjoying the show and if you're enjoying the heat these ladies are bringing, please show love to the channel. If you can, peep some game with Torraine Walker TV. You can support the channel through Cash App, PayPal, Patreon, Venmo. Everything is tied to Torraine Walker. So if you feel so inclined, you want to drop something in the bucket, please show me some love so I can keep shows like this going. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna switch gears real quick. I want to talk a little bit about something that's tied also into the theme of the night. It's the what I like to call the deflection of Black politics. I'm going to play a couple of clips. The first clip, and this ties into also what we're talking about political messaging. The first one I'm going to show you what the grassroots look like in Minneapolis after George Floyd's murder. And then I'm going to show you how that began to progress. So I'm going to play that really quick, and then we'll come back and talk about that. This should take about a minute or so. Okay, so that video that I just played, that was, I think, 2 nights after George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. The people who were out there on the streets were people from the neighborhood, from the block, grassroots people who had enough. And you see the energy. It was like a lot of hood brothers. It was a lot of brothers who were in gangs, but they came together to unite, to basically shut down, for lack of a better term, the police precinct there. That's what happened right after George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. After that happened in Minneapolis and the protests started going around the nation, you started seeing the energy change. And I want to show you some videos, something that happened in Atlanta, actually, about 3 weeks after that. And you just take a look at the difference. All right, I took the audio out because there's a song in the midst of it. But basically, these are riot cops in full gear doing the Macarena with quote unquote protesters in the middle of Atlanta. I want to talk a little bit about that because you can see the difference between from when the grassroots was on the streets to when official activists, quote unquote, and protesters were on the street. And this is something that I like to call the BLMification of Black politics. And what I mean by that is like when something happens to Black people, or when something happens to Black people in lower income communities or in poor and working class communities, usually the direct response is something very visceral. It's Black people who have basically had their backs against the wall. We saw it kind of like happen in Ferguson. That's kind of where that started. We have people literally physically going head to head with what they see as their oppressor. And then after a while, it starts to mellow out. And then the energy starts deflected into all these different sort of like safe, non-threatening areas. So you have like people dancing with riot cops and twerking on cars and stuff like that. I got another video I'll pull up in a little bit. It's kind of like the same thing. And I brought that up is because I feel like, and this is just my opinion and I'll throw it to you ladies. I feel like what happened with that sister on the beach twerking and everything is sort of like a continuation of that BLMification of Black politics, where you take the teeth out of something that's really happening on the street. You remove the people who are really motivating and mobilizing the people, and you make it into this sort of milquetoast, sort of commercialized thing where nothing really happens, and you kind of get into these talking points and nothing really moves. And I also want to bring that up for another reason. I feel like the urgency and anger of grassroots activism gets diverted into these agendas by design. So I want to start with, I want to throw it to Paris because she hasn't spoken in a while. Then I want to go back to Sister Zakiya, and then I'll swing it back around to Rhonda. Do you think that that's valid? Do you think that what happens is when there's real energy on the streets, that it gets dissipated into all this useless conversation? Paris, what do you think?
Absolutely. I feel like that's the first thing that they do is throw us a distraction. And this whole thing, it kind of is a whitewashing thing because they start telling us we're the problem again. Oh, stop tearing up the neighborhood. Stop burning down stuff. Well, why would I do that when I don't own nothing? All this stuff y'all's. What am I? And the thing is, we weren't even doing it. We saw people on foot in Minneapolis who were regular patrons, regular civilians, posting things online, whether it was Facebook, whether it was Instagram, whether it was TikTok, whether it was Twitter, letting us know right here, right now. The news crew had linked with police officials, and they even went so far as to show us what the police officials were dressed like, pretending to be regular civilians, going to paint people's property, going to break into stuff, going to start fires, going to start riots. And then they started to say, well, these are Black people. They're doing this and they're acting a fool and they're acting up. But my thing is, we had every right to it. We were, because we were the victim. And I have a problem with that, where you try to make it seem like the way that we react to injustice is the issue when you built your back off our blood. Our ancestors should be very upset with the fact that even right now to today, we still not on feet, on grounds, tearing everything up. Damn Roe v. Wade, you know, and I'm a woman. I actually support pro-choice. But at this point in time, we got tons of Black kids, tons of Black men, tons of Black girls that are getting killed, coming up, you know, kidnapped and things like that. And we can't account for all of these issues.
Missing.
So I think they always do that. In my personal opinion, like I said, I feel like, in my humble opinion, I feel like that the politicians, I feel like that the government are always watching something in relation to us and our issues and our plight. I feel like they don't care. I think that they utilize whatever they can in relation to Hollywood and take our story and call it art, because they feel like we're going to be so engulfed into the trauma of it that we're going to buy it all up because it's representation. And then because you have so many Black people in white academia who were allocated that opportunity because they were already growing up in suburbs. They were already taught to, you know, do this, do that, follow a certain type of pattern so that they can get in these white places, because for some reason that was the successor for them. To be the only Black person in the room, so you can complain about it to Black people, but in actuality, you feel very comfortable because you've always been the only Black person. So you only do this when it's beneficial to you. You only start wearing braids when it's beneficial to you. But we see y'all when y'all dressed up pictures because y'all wigs do not be laid. We know where those type of Black people coming from, because the beauty shop has always been our thing. But you sit here and you try to make it seem as if that you are on our side, when again, just like Zakiya said, you're going to Harvard, you're going to whitewashed Howard, and you're going to allow them to tell you your story, which we know that has been since erased. They're telling you, oh no, there is no color. But damned if a white woman goes and marries out to a Black man, because if she does, she better marry one with money. She knows what's going to happen to her. But you feeling like it's okay to go get in bed with your oppressor. You telling us your oppressor is treating you better than the Black man, the one that is being wrongfully slain, the one that they are encouraging the genocide of, and then you telling us that you can raise these Black babies. You don't call switch that well, Miss Mamas, because at the end of the day, you still one of us. So yes, I do think it's a very much so distraction. I think that sometimes they find a multitude of ways to put out something that could be a bigger issue, because in all actuality, we knew Roe v. Wade was happening. We knew it. They just leaked it. But what else was happening at that point in time? They didn't tell you about the fact that they was passing a law that would stop Black people from suing the police task, that would stop us from actually, you know, getting back getting back compensation from being locked up.
And the other thing too, along with that, exactly. And check out the other one. A week before Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court ruled that innocence is not enough to get off the death penalty in Arizona. And that's how you know this is a white liberal driven conversation, because the media barely even mentioned that case a week before Roe. But now you even got Black people, and I've been having conversations with Black people. I'm like, okay, so you upset about that? Okay, cool, I got you. I feel you. But did you also know that you can still get executed according to the Supreme Court, even if you're innocent? Not like they just rolled back to Black people anyway.
They rolled back Miranda rights too. They rolled back a lot of protections for Miranda rights as well.
All types of stuff that disproportionately impact us.
It don't matter if you had a Black man who was wrongfully accused of anything, whether it was due to the crime bill or whether it was due to the white devil, the woman. And it don't matter if any of that happened, because guess what? Yeah, he could have spent 27 years of his life in jail, but he gonna have to take that with a slap on his wrist. We're not paying no more out to that man. It don't matter if he need to start up in the economy or not. We're not wiping off his record clean. We're not expunging it. He's got to deal with it. He was a criminal. He did the time, and that's what we see him as, and that's what they're telling us. But again, I stand in that. Everything is a distractor. The government tells us what they want us to know, not what we actually need to know.
Zakia, I want to ask you this. Tying into the thing I said about the BLMification of Black politics, I know you saw a lot of this because, you know, like I said, you do a lot of grassroots work in your area. Do you think that, do you think that things like this, like, you know, the whole idea of the twerking on the beach, the whole idea of dancing with the cops, the whole idea of doing these prayer meetings in these church socials and groups, do you think all this stuff is tied into the fact that all these things there's like serious legislation being put in place to seriously curtail our rights that they want to keep us distracted from completely?
Absolutely.
I already know what your answer is going to be, but I want to ask it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why having a historical analysis is key, especially for Black people. We have to know and understand our history in this country. And the reason why I say that is because the last really strong movements that we have had as Black people actually brought this country on the brink of revolution in the 60s and 70s. Black folks did that. Grassroots Black folks did that. We pushed this country on the brink of a revolution. And so white people are scared. They know. Other thing, they've also studied us. These people have probably studied us more than any other group of people, animal, or anything. They've studied us. And so absolutely, they have weaponized our own music against us. They have weaponized our talents and artistic abilities against us. And so you see things driven into this, you know, we're activists and it's fun. Like this is not like the movements of the past where people were serious. Do you understand me? Where we built strong organizations, so strong that the FBI, the United States government, went toe to toe to bring them down. COINTELPRO is one of the most successful programs. I have to remind people who are listening that's still working to this day. There has never been a memo released from the United States government saying that they denounced COINTELPRO and that they will never use these tactics again. Absolutely. And now that we have social media, that makes it even easier. That's why I've had to, you know, and Torraine, you probably saw this, but I've had to, you know, message a few of my brothers like Tommy, Brother Rennie, like, stop arguing with these daggone troll farms. These are not real people, man. You got FBI agents that's probably their whole job is to get on Twitter and get on social media to ensure Black people stay divided. They're gonna make sure.
I don't doubt it.
Me and Torraine, we actually dissect that. We did.
Exactly.
We dissected it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's research that actually shows that troll farms actually exist. They exist. They're out there, right?
Oh yeah.
And we know that the government is going to ensure that we don't use social media as a tool for organizing. They know our power as Black people. I also believe that we are currently in one of the. I'm gonna
drop a little bit of history on some people real quick. I'm sorry, sister. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I was wrapping up, and again, that's why I think history is so important. We have to contextualize everything. COINTELPRO, what we have now is COINTELPRO 2.0, and they definitely weaponize gender specifically to make sure that we're divided. Let me give this one example before I end my comments. And this is how I know that a lot of us are not really trained to look at the deception that white people and white institutions perpetuate against us. So the coach of Brittany Greener's team, which I believe is the Phoenix, whatever they call Mercury, the coach said, you know, Brittany would be home if she was LeBron James. Mm-hmm. So why you got to bring in LeBron? You can hold the U.S. State Department and President Biden accountable without bringing in a Black man. They are always trying to slickly in some kind of way create a division. And I was shocked to see so many Black people retweeting that and resharing it without giving any type of critical analysis. Number one, where in the history of Black people in the world have Black men been given preferential treatment by law enforcement? Period. Where?
They should have said if she was LeBron James, she wouldn't have been locked up in the first place.
And a lot of people responded with that. Exactly. And a lot of people responded with that. So that's what I'm saying is we really need to study and literally study our own thinkers and scholars. Dr. Marimba Ani, Dr. Amma Mazama, Amos was all of these people. We have
Dr. John Henry Clark.
John Henry Clark, because these are the people, they again, they know what we're capable of. These are the people in today's movement that I can tell ain't nobody out there twerking ever read none of those people, because they will know how serious this is.
I want to say something really quick. A little bit of history for the group, and I know most of the panel probably knows this. In the aftermath of the Watts riots in California, there was a collective that was started by some former Black Panthers called the Watts Writers Group. And what that was basically they've got inner city kids who show like some skill and writing talent to basically just write out their life stories and write out what some of the things they were experiencing in LA. If you look at it, it was sort of a precursor to what ended up becoming like West Coast hip hop, because these were like young street kids who had poetry skills, so they knew how to write. And it was a place for them to come and kind of like hone their skills to be able to express themselves. And a lot of writers like Amiri Baraka and other people who were prominent writers, Nikki Giovanni, I believe at the time, came out there to give readings and help encourage these kids. And what ended up happening was it became sort of a small school where these kids began to chop up political ideas and basically share their knowledge with each other. The FBI came in and infiltrated that group. And there were so many agents inside of that group that half of the group was competing with one each other to try to spy on the rest of it. The government ended up destroying that group. And all it was a bunch of small young Black kids who were trying to hone their writing skills and try to express themselves. So they're willing to go to that length to try to ruin a small writers group in Watts. Imagine the lengths they'll go to try to destroy conversations on social media. So Rhonda, I want to ask you, and I'm going to swing back around to, let me ask you, how did we even get to this place? How did we get to the place where a woman twerking on the beach is seen as a viable candidate for political office for Black people?
It all started when, what's her name? Steinem. Is it Barbara?
Gloria
Steinem.
She's a CIA operative.
It all started when she told Black women that the right thing for us was feminism, and that we were also up against our men and we were being oppressed by them. This split that we saw in this gender split between Black men and Black women has been one of the most painful, agonizing things that's happened to the Black community, because you don't have the Black woman. If you have the Black woman and the Black man at odds, now you have a problem with the Black family. If you have a problem with the Black family, now you have a problem with finances. If you have a problem with finances, now you have a problem with generational wealth. If you have a problem with generational wealth, that relates to education, business, and then if you don't have wealth, then how are you going to get politicians to care about your plight? How are you going to get them to listen to you when you're up against big pharma, when you're up against demographics with more money, when you're competing against for attention against the corporations who are going to be more important than you because they're able to speak with their dollars and they have a bigger a voting block. And so that has been a huge part. The destruction of the relationship between the Black man and the Black woman and the destruction of the family has been a huge aspect of where we are right now. You see Black women outpacing men in terms of education. Not all, but some Black women will use that to say that Black men are not eligible partners. Well, what's wrong with Black men going into skills and trades at a point where our families were, I don't really know if I could say the strongest, but the era when a lot of our families were working, in the factories, taking up skills and trades was, a time where our families, I would say, were stronger than today. And so I think that that's a huge part, and it touches every aspect of what we see, right? even the fact that when you don't have these fathers in the home, you are going to be more likely when a young boy has to grow up in poverty or has a chance of maybe not finishing his education if he does not read on a higher level. All of these other indicators to show that he possibly may have more run-ins with the police because of the type of neighborhood that he's living in, because of the type of activities that he may be involved in to keep himself afloat. It may be getting into the wrong subcultures or activities and things like this. And so all of those things stem back to the family. And who is pushing on us that you don't need families? Like let's think about this, right? Who is pushing on us? You don't need families. You don't need a man. Heck, you can be a man these days if you want to. You feel like a man today? Well, just say you're one. You know, you can change your pronouns. Like, a lot of this goes much deeper than people want to admit, and it's a big deal. Like, we have to, strong families create strong communities. That's just point blank period. And we want to try to turn around and you know, kind of blame it on the politics. And don't get me wrong, the state has been a huge part of what they have specifically done to our families. But to repair it, I don't necessarily think the biggest part is going to come through them. I just don't. I don't see that the people that have destroyed us at such lengths, like you even just mentioned with that history lesson that you gave us, will want to turn around and repair us at even greater lengths. I just, you know, call it what you will, maybe nihilistic, but I just don't believe that. I think in a lot of ways we're going to have to take it upon ourselves to repair a lot of the damage that's been done to us. But that's where it started.
One more thing I want to ask, and hopefully Zakiya, welcome back. There's something that I've noticed that happens, and I said this earlier. If you look at political messaging, when politicians are either campaigning or when they're doing stump speeches or when they're trying to speak to their constituents, when they go to every part of the constituency, every ethnic group, every gender identity, when they go to other ethnic groups, they run a hall, they show up in suits, and they show up with a folder, and they get behind a podium, and they tell the people they're trying to appeal to what sort of policy proposals for each specific community they have. They either try to motivate people to come out to vote for them by telling them directly, this is what my opponent is about, this is what I can do for you, and this is what I can promise you, even though it may not be true, this is what I can guarantee you if you vote for me. When they come to the Black community, what do we get? We get line dancing, we get fried chicken, we get hot wings, and we get things like Chucks and Pearls, and we get people who are clapping when they see this stuff. Zakiya, I'm gonna ask you, because I know you have more of a history in this. Going back on Rhonda's point, why does that happen? And again, why do we allow that?
So again, I believe that white liberals use quote unquote culture, right? The American sort of Black culture and things that we do or participate in. They basically weaponize that as a form of distraction, as I mentioned earlier, to distract us from the real pain that a lot of us are living in. And I don't think that we necessarily allow it, quote unquote. I just think that we are in a different time in history where we have so many other things on our plate that we can't really bear the level of organizing and advocacy that really needs to happen en masse. So don't get me wrong. I know Black people are doing the work. There are a lot of Black people out there that are doing the work, but you don't necessarily see it on social media. There are Black folks who are completely done with the Democratic Party, like myself, right? Like, there's a lot of us that have started to look at alternatives to just checking off a box and not being a part of the entire political process. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes before you even get to the vote. But notice that they only target us when it's time to vote, not before, and certainly not after. You know what I mean? You know, when Trump was running, he made a comment that was unfortunately true. He said, you know, what do you got to lose? He was like, you ain't gonna see the Democrats until another 4 years. And I remember that went viral on social media because Black people was like, okay, I don't like this dude, but he ain't lying about this. It's the truth, you know. So I think that one of the things that we can do to get them to take us seriously is to basically get more creative about how we're voting, not just voting a straight Democratic line because we have nostalgia. You understand me? We're living in present day, and Black people are catching hell all across this country. And you don't have people, particularly politicians. I made this point the other day on social media. I live in the DMV region, and I'm looking at the fact that homelessness is going through the roof. And also within that, the vast majority of homeless people are actually Black men. You know what I mean? When you look at the numbers. I was in Atlanta. It's terrible. It's everywhere. So the fact that they got people out here twerking and not talking about serious issues in terms of housing justice, economic justice, education justice, all of these things that help produce a better quality of life if we have the type of investments and the type of and implementing the type of strategies that we're absolutely capable of. The blueprints are literally there.
Well, Zakiya, to your point, I will also say too, with the voting strategies, we got a lot of older, repetitive, traditionalized Black people who still run off of the mentality of a hope and a promise. Have a little faith. And now that you have us coming up in this new generation, that we're actually leading the forefront of it, what you're seeing is that we are encouraging other people to vote, but they have more strength in their numbers from the older people, and it's harder to sway them, you know. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues, because a lot of people feel like in the Black community nowadays, the popular thing is, well, I want to break generational curses, but they're not necessarily doing that. They're just making new ones. So until we get to the root of how we can collectively get each other a join and provide the accurate information at a entertaining level without us being extremely provocative, we're always going to be having a lag in communication somewhere, because it's almost as if it's extreme ideas. Some Black people want to be fed information. You just tell them, I know this, and they take it as a general rule of thumb if you're sounding convincing enough. And then you have some Black people where it's like they have their own mind. They're going to think what they want to think. And regardless if you okay with it or not, that's just going to be the thing. But you don't have as many of them. So I think once we get to an area where we can be a little bit more progressive with how we relate information, as well as doing it good enough to keep every part of our audience engaged, from the 18 to 25 to the 26 to 42 to the elder demographic. We're going to have people that can place us in that light so that they can be a little bit more informative about how we vote, what we need to vote, especially even voting as a collective, because we get to bullying each other. And I can't sit here and make it seem like my life as a single Black woman looks like the average day life of a two couple household with 3 or 4 kids. It don't look like that. So me voting the same way you vote is not necessarily going to be in your best interest.
All right. I'm going to wind it down with this, and I'm going to throw this around the room one last time, and I'm going to finish it out with this. Rhonda, how do we stop this? How do we stop our people from not taking voting serious and voting like actual adults and not dancing around all the time, and letting people know that we don't need to be pop locking, we don't have to have politicians show up and clap in church to make ourselves be heard? Because I'm personally tired of seeing this. If I see this one more time, I'm gonna snap.
Malcolm X talked about this in the 60s. This has been a perpetual problem. He talked about the fact of us not like really taking it seriously. And honestly, I don't know that I know the answer. I don't know that I know the answer. If out of all times, if the Biden era, if 2020 didn't wake us up, if during the largest worldwide police brutality protest, right after that, you give us Crime Bill Joe? I don't know. I don't know what more there is to say.
It's insanity.
It doing the same thing over and over again. I literally said that to one of my friends during 2020. I said, it seems like insanity to me. That's when you do the same thing over and over again with the same result. They were so offended. I do not know why. We are watching the real-time definition of what this is. And so if it didn't happen now, if it didn't happen in 2020, I just don't have that much hope, honestly, because that is so mind-boggling, and so it was actually offensive to us as a people. We spent so much time talking about the crime bill, what happened to our families, just to turn out in droves and vote for this man. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
So I want to share
on a hope and a prayer. So at this point,
I'm with you, sis. I actually just want to share something that I think is really important to one of the points you just made, Sister Rhonda, and that is the media created this frenzy about, Black voters really turned out and flipped Pennsylvania, and Black voters really turned out and flipped Wisconsin. There's a grassroots Black think tank in Baltimore, Maryland called Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. Their director of research is a brother named Lawrence Grand Prix. And if you got the time, you can go back and scroll. He actually went back, combed through the data in all of those states where the media said Black people came out in droves. Detroit was one of them. And that's what pushed Biden over the top. That is actually inaccurate when he went back and actually examined the data. And I thought that was so critical, but of course it didn't get a lot of widespread, views or whatever, or people listening to it and actually talking about it and debating it, not even on Black media platforms. I talked about it on my YouTube channel, but I think that we also have to know that there's some nefarious things also involved in the entire political process, and that Black people actually did not show up any more or less in those particular states. Biden won based on, but it wasn't because Black people really, really dramatically increased their numbers in voting. That's actually inaccurate after he went back and examined the election data.
I need that information.
Absolutely.
All right. You know what? I think that's where we're gonna put a pin in it for tonight. I want to thank my panel for showing up. I'm glad that all these sisters who I reached out to were able to come through. Thank you so much. Sister Zakiya, Black nationalist, thought leader, co-founder of Racial Justice Now. Rhonda Mary, political commentator and Second Amendment advocate. Paradise Paris, social media influencer and turn up sister on Twitter. Give everybody, let's go through the room and let everybody know how they can reach you. Let's start with you, Sister Zakiya.
Absolutely. Well, number one, I definitely want to stay connected with these two brilliant, beautiful Black women here. We share a lot of the same politics, but people can follow me on Twitter at Zakiya Shinyere, or you can go to Real Talk with ZSJ on Twitter and on Instagram. So I'm also on Facebook. And you can also take a look at my YouTube channel and subscribe if you like. That's Real Talk with ZSJ on YouTube. Thank you, Brother Torraine, for inviting me to the platform.
My pleasure. Paris, how can people get a hold of you? What are you working on?
Woo! I have a lot of platforms. So first and foremost, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Paradise Paris. Very simple, straight to the point. On Twitter, _Paradise Paris 1. On TikTok, _Paradise Paris. on my YouTube, just landed in Paris. Anchor FM, Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I'm just landed in Paris as well.
Woo!
Be sure to follow my YouTube. I am having another giveaway subscription. It's free. I do include men and women. All you got to do is just follow my Instagram and my Facebook, Paradise Paris, and my Twitter, because that's where I'm most interactive at. You can always talk to me. And to see what's happening next with me, you need to be on my TikTok _Paradise Paris.
She got a lot of hats going on. I respect that. Rhonda, how about you? How can people get a hold of you? What are you working on?
I am on YouTube, Rhonda Mary. On Instagram, Rhonda_Mary, and on Twitter, I am Rhonda Mary. So it's some form of Rhonda Mary. If you type that in on these platforms, you'll find me.
All right, so that's what we're gonna call it a night. I want to thank the panel again for coming through and dropping these jewels on the rest of the audience. Thank you, ladies, so much. And thanks everybody for spending your Wednesday evening with me. My name is Torraine Walker. I'm going to try to keep bringing these things to you twice a week. We're going to have really hot conversations. Thank you so much for joining me. And you can also catch me on Twitter. My name is Torraine Walker. I'll be over there either on Spaces or just making people mad and giving my opinions, one of the two, usually both. So thank you, everybody. Everybody have a good night, and everybody take care. God bless. Stay blessed.
Take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Left.